into this special edition of Inside the Cockpit. I'm Morgan Francis, along with our Chief Transportation Correspondent, May-Kay Beeler. We're following the latest breaking news with the death of the Biffle family and 3 others after their plane crashed in Statesville yesterday. It is late morning on Friday. We are expecting a news conference from the NTSB at some point today. But May-Kay, I want to get your perspective on we have a lot of questions surrounding this plane crash, a lot that are not going to be answered today, right? But let's start with the plane. What do we know right now about the aircraft?
All right, so Cessna Citation 2, very, very popular small private jet, about 8 seats in it. Fast airplane, as far as we know, with limited reports. The family was headed down to Florida from Statesville Regional Airport, so it was full of fuel. Apparently, there was an issue. We don't know what the issue was. We're going to leave the investigators to determine that, that caused the aircraft shortly after takeoff to turn back around and return to Statesville.
Let's take a look at that flight path. You're an experienced pilot. You're a flight instructor as well. Just based off of this flight path alone, we see that shortly before they reach the Catawba River along I-40, it makes a very sharp turn to come back to Statesville Regional Airport. Obviously, we don't know what happened inside the airplane, but as an experienced pilot, what does this flight path tell you?
Well, the flight path, it just tells me that something's wrong and I need to turn around as soon as possible. Yeah, there's a reason for that. We don't know if it was pilot incapacitation, if there was an engine problem, an engine fire, something wrong with the passenger on board, whatever the reason, or maybe a passenger forgot something, we don't know. The airplane needed to turn around. So that's what that tells me, just plain and simple.
Is the angle of that U-turn, normal that you would see, or is it a very sharp turn?
It appears to be a sharp turn if this is accurate.
Okay.
I don't know if this is accurate.
Okay.
Appears to be a sharp turn. Okay. So somebody's in a hurry to turn around and get back.
We do know that the airplane barely it didn't make the runway, right?
Right.
We hear from eyewitnesses that it hit some trees and the fence before the airport, and then it ended up on the east side of the airport. So what does that tell you about kind of the emergency situation and the approach to the airport, that it clearly wasn't able to make it to the runway?
So I can't speculate, and I will tell you what investigators will be looking into. But they didn't have enough thrust, power to make it to the runway, obviously. So either the pilot lost control of the airplane, or perhaps they had both engine failures. They didn't have enough power or thrust to make it to the runway. We don't know. That is something the NTSB will determine for us.
Taking a look at the plane itself, we've been doing some digging, trying to figure out if this plane was, if it required 1 or 2 pilots.
Right.
That's been something that's been difficult to figure out, right?
Yeah, we're trying to figure that out. And we don't want to accuse anyone of anything, but there are rumblings out there, and we're not going to repeat rumors, that perhaps this airplane, some of the Cessna 550s or the Citation 2s, can only need a single pilot on board. You can have another pilot or anybody sitting in the right seat, but it's only one pilot is required to fly the plane safely. Other Citation 550s require 2 pilots, and they both have to be type rated. We don't know who was in the right seat. We assume, I hate to say the word assume, we know who the pilot was, and according to FAA documents or the Airman Registry,
Dennis Dutton.
Yes, Dennis was qualified and type rated to fly the 550, but required a second pilot on board. So that second pilot would need to be certified or type rated in that aircraft. We don't know who was in the right seat.
So we did look up Greg Biffle and Jack Dutton. Craig Wadsworth was a little difficult to find out whether or not he was a pilot. We know Greg Biffle was a private pilot, had a private pilot certificate, and Jack Dutton had the same. Would that have theoretically been, if the plane required a second pilot, and then Dennis required the second in command, would those certificates be enough?
No.
Okay. So we really need to find out then at some point from the NTSB if this plane did in fact require
and we've made some phone calls, but we don't have answers yet. So we're not going to accuse anybody of anything. But this is out there. This question needs to be answered.
Okay.
Yeah.
Taking a look at the wreckage, obviously this is just a horrible, tragic
horrific
accident.
Yeah.
Not only the Biffle family impacted, but we had Dennis Dutton and his son Jack, as well as Craig Wadsworth. Going forward, we always hear with plane crashes that investigators are looking for a black box. Does a plane like this have that?
Right. Well, first let me just tell you the reason this crash is so horrific. It was full of fuel. The airplane was going to Florida. Right. So usually when an airplane lands, it doesn't have that much fuel on board. But this had just taken off full fuel to head to Sarasota, Florida, and then had to come back and land immediately. So, that's why there was so much smoke and so much fire.
On that, was in your training, is there ever a point that in a situation like that you would try to dump fuel before?
Right. Not in this particular type of airplane, but with airliners you do.
Okay.
Because we have a maximum takeoff weight and a maximum landing weight. Now, I am not checked out in this particular citation, but typically if you have too much fuel on board and you can dump it, then you will do it. But in an emergency, we don't know what the emergency was. If an engine was on fire or both engines weren't working, you don't have time to go circle and dump fuel.
Right.
So you've got to land. What happens is if you don't have time to dump fuel, it's just hard on the undercarriage. It's hard on the landing gear. It can cause structural damage. That's the only point. Okay. But if you're on fire and you have a problem, you've got to get on the ground right now. You don't have time to dump fuel.
Right. There's no opportunity.
But that was a good question.
Okay. So going back to this so-called black box, does a plane like this have that or what would give us more information about what went wrong?
Right, and that's a really good question. So this is a 1981 Cessna Citation 2. We don't know if it had a black box on board. So black box, cockpit voice recorder, cockpit data recorder. We don't know if it was equipped with that. If it was equipped with both of these boxes, that's going to give all the answers. All the answers. Now, the small jets that I have flown that are comparable to this airplane, we did have a data recorder, but that was not a Cessna. So this Cessna 550 citation, I can't tell you that right now. Investigators will be able to tell us that, but that's going to provide all the answers right there.
This might be just me not knowing the aircraft industry. Is that something that is that information is recorded via cloud, or is that something that's a physical?
It's physical.
So
it's physical recording.
Is that sometimes something that just doesn't survive the crash?
No, it's supposed to be indestructible.
Okay.
It's not black, it's orange. We're talking about for the airliners.
Right.
I don't think this plane had one. It may have. I'm not familiar. I'm not type rated in this aircraft.
Okay.
But they're supposed to survive everything.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the airport itself. Statesville Regional Airport. They don't have a tower, right? There's no air traffic controller. So when we're talking about the communication in the moments leading up to the crash, we know that they took off shortly after 10 o'clock, and by 10:15, 10:20, unfortunately, the plane had gone down. So is there any communication that is recorded that could possibly tell us more? You're nodding yes.
So a non-towered airport, we have what's known as a UNICOM, or a Common Traffic Advisory Frequency, typically 122.8. I think this was 123.075 at this airport. But it is recommended that pilots use this Common Traffic Advisory Frequency to announce their intentions. So it'd be Statesville Traffic, Cessna, 257 Bravo Whiskey, departing runway 28 with a left turn out to the whatever. They would give that. So whether that was recorded or not, that Unicom is recorded or not at Statesville, I don't know. But they would make that recording or that broadcasting their intentions, so that other pilots in the area know, there's an airplane that's getting ready to take off and the runway is 28 or departing runway 10. Now, when they take off, I don't know how quickly something went wrong. They typically would be handed over to Atlanta Center. So they're on an instrument flight plan. They're not just out on a beautiful day flying around. There were low clouds that day. Visibility was okay, but there was drizzle. So they're on an instrument flight plan to Sarasota, Florida. So they're on a flight plan. So once they take off from Statesville, they're going to contact departure and check in with Atlanta Center or whoever. That would be recorded.
Would it happen that soon after takeoff?
Within 2 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Within 2 minutes.
Okay.
We do the checklist, gear up, take or turn off, and then Atlanta Center. November 257 Bravo Whiskey is with you.
Okay.
So unless something happened very quickly, because you fly the airplane first, you always fly the airplane first, and you talk later.
Right.
Right.
And things, as
and then
we've
whatever
seen, went
happened,
south very quickly.
And from some reports I've heard, they did tell Atlanta Center or whoever that they had a problem, and they were going back to the airport. I haven't verified that. I haven't heard the tapes.
Okay. And so, aside from, we've already mentioned the plane's rating, whether it was necessary to have a single pilot or a second pilot. Aside from that, what are the questions you still have that at least in the short term can be answered? We know the NTSB reports, they can take, months, they can take
years,
a
year and a half
for that information to come out. What are you hoping in the short term to learn?
Well, this is what I can give you the whole list of what the NTSB is going to look into. And you can bet it's all maintenance records. It's also pilot qualifications. All right, so they're going to look into when was the last maintenance done on this aircraft? When was the last maintenance done? Who is responsible for the maintenance? So it was a leasing company. It says that was owned by Biffle. So if that was the case, they're going to check out all those records to make sure there wasn't any shady maintenance going on here, and if it complied with all the inspections. It's a 1981 aircraft. You may think, that's an old aircraft. That can't be safe. Not true. As long as all the inspections are taken care of and the aircraft is airworthy, it's fine. So they're going to look at the maintenance records. Like you had mentioned, if there's a data recorder, cockpit voice recorder, probably not a voice recorder, but at least a cockpit data recorder, that's going to give all the answers. So they'll look into that. If not, they're going to look into ATC communications, air traffic control. Did they talk to Atlanta Center or someone else? What did they say? Did they declare an emergency? We got to turn back. We got an engine fire.
Right.
We got this or that, whatever. Unicom, I don't think that's recorded. That's the Common Traffic Advisory frequency, but they'll look into that. They're going to look into the pilot records. So was the pilot qualified to fly this airplane?
I think that's the number one question.
That's the number one question
everyone
right now.
wants to get answered. Yeah.
And we're not going to spread rumors.
No.
We don't know. But that's, was he qualified to fly this airplane? Who was in the right seat? Was his son in the right seat? Did there need to be someone qualified in the right seat with him? And there wasn't. That's going to be a lawsuits galore. The medical certificate of the pilot, was that current? I believe it was. Recency of flight, how often had he been flying? What was the record of the pilot? They would do a drug and alcohol test of the remains, if possible.
You're right.
If possible. Were there engine issues? Was something mechanical that went wrong? Was something instrumental that went wrong? Did it have a glass cockpit or the old dial instruments? Did something go wrong with the instrumentation? Was there pilot incapacitation? Did the passenger have an emergency? We don't know any of these.
So many questions.
And this is something that's very important. We did hear yesterday that there was a witness on the golf course and saw the plane. Oh, the plane was really low and it came in over the trees and it missed the runway. Well, these reports are important, and investigators will ask, did you hear the engines running? Were the engines running?
Were they out? Yeah.
Or was it quiet? Big clue. Or did you hear engine changes, or where there's no noise at all? So this is where eyewitness reports are very important.
I know you're not on the investigative side, and I may be asking you a question you can't answer, but I'm just curious. Do you know how long investigators from the NTSB are, typically on the ground investigating this kind of stuff?
I think for this one, a week.
Okay.
A week is from what I heard.
Okay.
They take at least a couple days.
Well, as you mentioned, they have to interview people who might not even be there anymore and might not know that the NTSB wants to talk with them.
And they can't open the airport yet, because the airplane, every piece has to be measured. This is where this was. This is where that was. They have to measure it and have a location for every piece. And then they'll remove it and take it and put it back together. So it takes a while. And there's only one runway at Statesville, which is a lovely airport, by the way, 7,000-foot runway. Okay. Yeah. General Aviation Airport, you think, it doesn't have a control tower. It can't be safe. Not true. That's a misnomer. It's just a smaller airport. It doesn't require a tower with people. So we keep our eyes open as pilots. We see and we avoid and we announce our intentions. Nothing unsafe about that.
Okay. Well, Maykay, thank you so much for providing your expertise. I think your perspective, sometimes we don't always know the questions to ask, right? But you just rattle them off And obviously, it goes without saying just how tragic this is, and not only for the NASCAR community, but for these families.
And two more things that I didn't get to talk about, because, yes, there is such a long list of what investigators will look into. Was the airplane overweight? So we have to do weight and balances to make sure that how much fuel can I carry? How many passengers? How much do you weigh? We weigh every passenger, or ask them their weight. How much luggage do we have in the back? And the airplane was supposed to go to Abaco in the Bahamas. So you would assume they probably had a lot of stuff on board. And I can tell you as a pilot who has flown small private jets, it's a tough thing. But we have a computer. We just plug in the numbers.
Right.
Which is lovely. Back in the day, you had to go through a pilot operating handbook.
Yeah.
But was the airplane overweight? Typically, if an airplane is overweight, it's going to have trouble getting off the ground. We don't hear any reports about that.
Well, we did see, and I can punch up the flight path again, but this is from Flight Radar 24. We're showing the path itself, but the other information on this website kind of showed that the plane's altitude...
Right, it didn't go very high.
It didn't go very high, and then it kind of came back down, and then went back up, and me as a non-pilot, I'm looking at that thinking, okay, I'm imagining the pilot struggling to keep this thing in the air.
Could have been a control issue.
Yeah, okay.
Could have been a flight control issue.
Could have had nothing to do with the weight.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm not saying it's the weight.
Right.
Yeah,
that's
because
something that they'll look into,
They'll look and see if there's a manifest and what was the weight. No, just one of the many things they'll look into. Also, the weather. So we haven't talked about the weather. So there were different reports about the weather. So Statesville doesn't have a meteorologist on the ground or in the tower looking out and giving you weather conditions. We have sensors, automatic weather observation service. So the sensors are pretty good. And at the time, right before they took off, apparently 50 minutes before that, it was 10 miles visibility, which is great. Ceiling 5,000 feet, which is great. Then it came down to about 5 miles visibility, still good visibility.
Okay.
But now there's a cloud deck at about 2,000.
Okay.
Or we should say maybe some scattered, then some broken clouds, and then overcast at 2,000 to 5,000 feet. And then they're only in the air 10 minutes. And then by the time they came back, it had come down to maybe 5 miles visibility, still good visibility. But they were probably maybe scud running a little bit, trying to stay out of those clouds if they have an issue so they can be visual.
Okay.
So
what is the visibility that's the cutoff you can't fly?
There is none.
There is none. Okay.
No, it depends on the qualifications of the pilot and the equipment on the aircraft.
Okay.
So some airplanes can land in 0-0 conditions. I would never take off in 0-0 conditions because we have maybe 200.5 would be the minimum requirement to come back in and land unless you're at a big airport with Cat 2 and different equipment.
A little nerve-wracking if you're landing with zero visibility.
Right. Typically 200.5. So 200-foot cloud deck, half a mile visibility would be the lowest for that runway 28 in Statesville, provided all the equipment was running. They had an emergency. I doubt you would have time to set up that instrument approach and fly the instrument. Maybe they did. I don't know, but they probably tried to come in visually. And according to what one expert said, it looked like they did a really steep turn, turning back to the runway, which could have stalled the airplane. They could have been too slow, and the airplane could have lost aerodynamic lift and lost control of the airplane.
So
that's something investigators will look into.
Compiling issues if that's what happens.
So we have just no idea. That's for the investigators, and we have to respect them and see what they find out. Also, NTSB, FAA, Textron Aviation, who took over Cessna Aircraft Company years ago, they will be consulted to. Pratt & Whitney, who run the engines, will be consulted as well. But I will tell you, JB Leasing, the leasing company, will be under the microscope.
Yeah, everything is under the microscope.
Was the maintenance up to snuff? Was the pilot qualified to fly the plane? What happened? We don't know. We don't want to point fingers. We don't know.
Yeah. Well, Maykay, thank you so much. Thank you to all of you who have been watching this today, this special edition of Inside the Cockpit on Queen City News Plus. If there's any more breaking news that comes out of this, we'll, of course, come on here and share it with you.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.